Hey everyone, if you've never seen me before, my name is Dr. Tavala. I make videos in order to share my journey through medicine with you. In today's video, I'll talk you through my first day in my new job as a doctor, where I went from doctor to patient to thief. If that interests you, then grab your tea and relax. Today's video will be different to my usual style of making vlogs. Over the last 4 months, which I've spent in genitourinary medicine, also known as sexual health, I've had some time in order to go abroad on a few trips. I'm currently in the process of editing these vlogs which I made while abroad. Just checking out Prague. Usually in my content I follow a chronological order. However, the reason why I'm prioritizing this video is I've had a lot of questions, especially on my Instagram because I posted this incident on there, asking me about what happened and how I'm doing. So I'm making this video in order to give you more of an explanation and also an update about my first day on acute medicine. Before delving into the details of the incident, I feel it's important for me to talk about something that I haven't really shared, and that is how I feel about returning to hospital medicine, and I wanted to share my thoughts and feelings on this with you. During the year that I worked in hospital medicine, bearing in mind that I'd started in the middle of a pandemic and didn't have much experience outside of that setting, I considered leaving medicine. However, I knew that the jobs that I have lined up this year would be quite different to what I had last year, especially considering that it's in a whole different hospital and trust. It's only in hindsight where I've been able to compare my year in the hospital with the 4 months that I've had in a clinic-based environment where I've really seen the difference in how I've felt. Although I ruled out hospital medicine as a long-term thing for me, I've really thrived in a clinic-based environment where I've had one-to-one interaction with patients. I've had that independence. I've been able to come to work to a team that I'm seeing on a regular basis in an environment that isn't quite as high stress, where people are able to have compassionate care, not just towards patients but also to each other. I've had good verbal as well as written feedback from patients as well as colleagues. That together with the comments I've had from you guys on social media as well as my friends and family about just my level of contentment with my life has been all really positive, and I feel that a clinic-based environment is something where I can thrive in, where I can be happy, content, and serve my community in a meaningful manner. In a way, the last 4 months has allowed me to conclude that there is space for people like myself in medicine. One message that I have for other foundation trainees or those more junior to that is the following. The foundation training program in the UK is 2 years, and the idea is to give you a flavour of the different specialties. So in my jobs I've had surgery, which is very different to the medical rotation. I've had the community-based placement as well. If I had thought to quit medicine after my first year, I would not have had the community experience, which actually really changed my views on where I can find myself in medicine. So my recommendation, of course, you are your own person, but my recommendation is to complete the foundation program, see what it is that might suit you, where your strengths are, see what it is that you really enjoy doing, finding what's meaningful for you, what's important for you, and then deciding, having considered these different sides of medicine, before deciding if being a doctor long term is for you or if it is something else that you want to move on to. So now moving on to my thoughts and feelings about returning to hospital medicine, there are a few different factors that I have to consider. Firstly, I'm at a new trust, a whole different hospital with a whole different team. In my first year as a doctor, I had some experience in acute medicine. Oh, whoops. This was on days where I should have been on take, where I would be clerking patients who have been referred to the medical team from A&E, and instead, because of staffing rearrangements in my trust, I'd be put on acute medicine. So in that way I was able to have a flavour of acute medicine. What struck me was the following. In specialized fields such as respiratory medicine, I'd have an idea of what might be coming through the door, for example, common conditions, asthma, COPD, bronchiectasis, and even other non-common conditions I'd be prepared to manage because I'd learnt about respiratory conditions that present in the hospital setting. However, in acute medicine, anything could walk through the door, and that in itself can be challenging. Another way that I felt about acute medicine is that it was physically demanding in that there was a lot of running around that I had to do, which is fine as an ad hoc thing, but I know that I'm going to be doing this job day in, day out for the next 4 months. Additionally, there are late days that we have where we start around 2, finish at 10, and also night shifts, which are 12 hours and in the night where it can get quite busy. So those are some things that I feel I might find challenging. But then again, it is a new hospital, a new team, a system that works differently. Paper knobs off. While I am aware of the demands that could present, I am really looking forward to my new job, working with my new team at this new hospital. So now I'm going to talk you through my first proper day on my new job in acute medicine. In the morning, I was telling my mum about how I was really looking forward to meeting the team. It would have been my first day actually meeting the people I'd be working with on a daily basis and meeting the consultants, which I haven't done yet. If you've been following me on Instagram or you have been keeping up to date with my vlogs, then you'd know that I've been cycling to work. The new hospital is a whole hour and a half for me on public transport. However, on the bike, it's an hour, and therefore I wanted to make that journey. Also, I've been a little bit slack with exercise over the last few weeks, especially since that video that I produced for you guys, which you can check out here, and therefore I wanted to get back in the rhythm of cycling to work. The first half an hour of the journey was pretty uneventful. However, when I got to a transition point into an area that I wasn't that familiar with, I've noticed that it was a lot more slippery because it had rained there. I don't have that clear recollection of events, but one thing that I do remember is, with the exception of one lady with a pram ahead of me, there were no cars, no cyclists, no motorists. It was just me, essentially by myself. And I decided to hit the pavement at a diagonal.
You decided to? Are you stupid?
I remember heading in the direction of the pavement in order to get off the cycling track, which had finished. The next thing I have is a memory of this really zoomed in clip of my front wheel gliding against the pavement. The next thing I remember is my arm outstretched like this and my head just on the floor. I could see my helmet about at least a meter away from me, unclipped from my head. And at this point, I don't even try to wonder how my helmet got there. I could hear this lady from behind calling, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" So I roll over, still on the floor, and I could see a pram with a baby in it, and clearly something told me it wasn't coming from the baby. So I then noticed a woman closer to me, and I said to her, "I'm okay," and then I sat up. She asked me again, "Are you sure you're okay?" To which I responded, "No." This time a little bit more honest with her and less embarrassed. She then put her arm out and asked me if I wanted help getting up, to which I responded yes. But for some reason I managed to get up on my own, and then when I stood up her arm was still out. So I just put my hand on it and just gently stroked it like this. Weird, I know. I don't remember what happened after that, but what I did do is I got back on the bike and I just started cycling in the direction of the hospital for 40 minutes. Now here's the thing, the hospital is only 20 minutes away. What ended up happening is I went in completely the wrong direction, and then I got to a motorway where it said cyclist dismount. And at that point I realized something was wrong. What made this even more problematic is the fact that I've made this journey on the bike a couple of times before, and ordinarily if I was in an area that I've never been to before, I would realize. I headed back to the hospital, and at this point I'm late. And here's the thing, when I walked into this now warm hospital, bearing in mind how cold it is outside on a December morning in London, I started to feel the pain on my knee. I went to the bathroom to have a look at it, and it looked like this. Now I don't know if this is a psychological thing or what, but this was the point where I started feeling immense pain in my knee. After that I headed to the ward for the big moment where I'd meet my new team. Bearing in mind this is the moment that I prepared for. I'd been telling my mum about meeting my team in the morning, and you know, all the first good impressions that we'd want to make, that went all down the drain. This is what I said. I said, "Hi, my name's Mama. I'm the new F2 here. I fell off the bike this morning and here's a picture of what my knee looks like. Is it okay if I have some time to myself?" And they were so nice about it. They were like, "Yeah, that's fine. You can have half an hour, go have some tea and then come join us." And now when I left the ward, I started to think about how I had actually fallen off the bike. Bearing in mind I've never done so before. And at that point I realized I couldn't actually recall what happened. Putting together the fact that my front wheel and the pavement was gliding together with the fact that my helmet was unclipped far away from me, I realized at this point that I lost consciousness. which is problematic. After processing this, instead of heading for some tea, which I know you guys know that I would have ordinarily went for, I went straight to the emergency department. I found a consultant that I had met the week before, and I said to her, hey, this is what happened. Unfortunately, because I'd met this person before, she knew what my baseline was like, and therefore she was able to gather the fact that I was actually confused, disoriented, and not quite with it. I was therefore seen as a patient by one of her colleagues, who initially said that I wouldn't have a CT head. However, having discussed this with her consultant, I was called back in order to have a CT scan of my head. Fortunately, it came back normal. However, given the ongoing confusion and me still not being with it, hours later, I was kept in overnight as they discussed me with the neurosurgery doctors. I was really fortunate with the hospital stay because I was put in a side room where I had basically upgraded from a bed mini to a bed mini XL. I had a sink, curtain, window, table, computer that didn't work, and an aircon which was generating warm heat, which is exactly what I needed when it was pouring with rain outside. I had a cannula put in my arm with fluids flowing through as I was kept in overnight. It was also decided, given that I had new pain in my tummy and I didn't actually remember the process of falling, that I'd have a CT scan of my abdomen and my pelvis. It was confirmed to me that I had a concussion and that I would need a couple of days in order to really rest myself. Scans can take a few hours to process, and the main thing for me when I was recovering was to sleep off the concussion. So that was my patient experience, where I became from doctor to patient overnight. Now, here's the point where I transitioned from patient to something else. So whilst I was trying to get some rest on the bed, I noticed this lady just walked into my room without knocking. So I sat up and I could see her rummaging through my stuff, and she picks up my ID card. So I put on my glasses and I sat up properly and I said to her, hi, can I help you? She ignored me. She continued looking through my stuff, and then she picks up the card again, looking at it, examining it. And then as she tried to leave the room, I said to her, excuse me, can I help you? And then she looked at me and said, no, you can't help me. At this point, I realized that she was holding a bin bag, but she hadn't changed any of the bins and she was trying to leave the room. So I said to her, excuse me, that's my ID card. Can I have it back, please? She looks at me and says, no, that's not your ID card. That's a doctor's ID card. So then I said to her, no, that is literally my ID card that you're holding. That is me in the picture. Look at me. So then she looked at the card, looked back at me and was like, no, it's a doctor's ID card. I took my ID card from her. I went and sat on my bed and was just like, you know what? It looks like I can't even leave my things on the table. And she was like, yeah, maybe you should leave your things on your bed with you. Subhanallah, subhanallah. So I sat in bed like, yeah, subhanallah. And then she leaves the room, right? And I thought this was over. Okay, I've got my ID card back. There's nobody rummaging through my stuff. But my one job at this point is to sleep and get as much rest as possible. But that's now the one thing I can't do because I'm scared that somebody else is going to walk into my room, start rummaging through my stuff and take my ID card. I gave it maybe 5 minutes to just sit up and just breathe and relax. And then I went to the nurses and I said to them, hey, you know, who was it that walked into my room because they tried to take my ID card? And the sister turned around, was just like, oh, are you the person in room number 2? I was like, yes. And she said, oh yeah, it was domestics. They said that there's a patient who's stolen a doctor's ID card. I didn't know I could go from being doctor to patient to thief in a day. Ah, subhanallah. Astaghfirullah. I then explained to the nurse that I'm a doctor. I was cycling on my first day in acute medicine. I fell off the bike and I'm a patient, but I'm not a thief. That's the one thing I'm not. In a nutshell, that is my experience of my first day in acute medicine in my new job. I guess it could only get better from here. The last thing I wanted to say is thank you so much for your prayers and wishes in order to wish me a speedy recovery. I feel a lot better than I had on the first day of the incident, and I'm really grateful for having the last couple of days in order to really just rest up and recharge. I'm going back to work in the morning. I'm still feeling a bit embarrassed at everything that happened, but I am looking forward to going back to meet my team properly when I don't have a concussion, when I'm not bleeding from my knee. Hopefully, inshallah, things will go smoothly from here. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the like button, hit the post notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Also, put your moi. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to
like, bell, subscribe. And come on and grab your tea and relax.
Mwah.
Yeah.